Hello and welcome back to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Happy Memorial Day, everyone. Today is Monday, May 26th, Memorial Day, if you're with us in the U.S. If not, happy Monday. Got a good show for you today. It's going to be a big, kind of fun day. Just a couple different lists we're going to go over. Coaches who had the best college football playing careers. We're also going to go over some of the group of 5 top quarterbacks today. And we're going to continue on with my Big Ten rankings. Make sure we stick around for that. That's going to be at the end of the show. We're going to start today, though, by talking about the Big Ten SEC current college football playoff proposed plan, kind of what it sounds like right now. We're going to get into all that, though. But before I do anything else, I just want to remind everybody, this show is all about you. We love hearing your comments, your questions, your insights, your opinions, your hot takes, whatever you got. We want to hear it. We want to make this show as interactive, as exciting as possible. Now, one easy way to do that, if you're on YouTube, you can use the Super Chat feature. To use the Super Chat feature, all you have to do is click the $ at the bottom of the chat box, type in your message there, send that in, and this guarantees that your message gets on the air, gets read live. It's also just a great way to support our channel, support what we're trying to build here at GSMC. We couldn't do what we do without your ongoing support, and we're so grateful to have you all here as a part of our community. Now, if you're not on YouTube, if Super Chat's not your thing, you can also go to gsmcpodcast.net to leave a comment, a question there as well. Tip, donate, do whatever there. Again, that link for the website is gsmcpodcast.net. Now, I want to dive into college football playoff new proposal from the Big Ten, the SEC. Now, this has been something that we've kind of seen throughout college football, where we've seen this kind of Big Ten SEC takeover of sorts, and this idea, it's kind of coming to fruition. It might be happening sooner rather than later now. There's kind of been momentum building towards future expansion of the college football playoff, according to Yahoo Sports, featuring kind of a bevy of automatic bids for each conference. Now, the contract for the 12-team format, and its recently kind of adopted straight seeding model that ends this year, after 2025. That current contract, it's not going to extend past that year. And this has been something that we don't really know what's going to happen next. Power Conference commissioners, they've kind of met earlier this month with future playoff formats being discussed. That's the main topic of conversation right now. And there's kind of been, quote, growing support for the Big Ten and the SEC's proposal. So these two conferences, it really sounds like they're going to have all the momentum here of making any kind of decision for the college football playoff future. They're going to influence the next round of expansion more than anybody else. And kind of how the format plays out, it gives them pretty much sole enacting power as the enforcement arm of the power commissioners, essentially. Under the 16-team proposal, there's going to be 8 auto bids for the Big Ten and the SEC. There's going to be 4 each for each conference, and there's going to be 2 ACC qualifiers, 2 Big 12 qualifiers, 1 group of 5, and then 3 at-large bids. So we're going to see automatic bids, it sounds like. Each conference is going to get at least a little bit. SEC meetings began this week, kind of with an exploration, too, of a 9-game conference schedule. That's something that's been on the front burner of conversations around the SEC, and that's something that the Big Ten does already. They do a 9-game conference schedule. Everybody kind of wants the SEC to follow suit right now. The only way it kind of sounds like they would really agree to this would be additional inclusion in a future playoff format or a bigger payday from their TV contract. Really, I mean, money talks always. That's kind of how it normally goes. Excuse me 1 second. I apologize. I'm going to be right back on this show. My allergies are acting up. I'm going to take 1 minute, and I'll be right back here on the GSMC College Football Podcast. I apologize for that quick little intermission there. It's allergy season here in Ohio. Always kind of gets you in the spring. But we're moving on. We're going to push through. And it sounds like, so the SEC and the Big Ten, they're really kind of pushing this entire conversation. The 4 automatic bids for each conference, it kind of seems like that is a huge sticking point right now. Both the SEC and the Big Ten, they really want this. They want to make sure that they have a guaranteed number of spots in the playoff each year. And it's something that they can kind of force the other conferences to agree with, right? When they had that meeting last year, when they were able to kind of get pretty much everybody throughout the FBS to agree to, hey, you two are going to lead the conversations around the college football playoff. You two are going to be the big decision makers here, and Tony Petitti, Greg Sankey from the Big Ten and the SEC, they kind of gave these two guys all this power. So they can ask for this. They can go, hey, we want 4 bids each. We're not going to do anything else. We're not going to change this format unless we get this. And they kind of have the power right now to do that because they were given it, essentially, by the other commissioners last year. It's going to be interesting, though, too. There's also discussions around play-in games, what's going to happen there. And especially with the Big Ten and the SEC. So essentially kind of how this would work is they would have play-in games during conference championship weekend every year, and those would determine the other auto bids. So essentially what would happen is the 2 teams who would appear in the league championship in that game, those would be 2 of the auto bids kind of regardless. And then it'd be the number 3 team in the conference versus the number 6 team in the conference, and the number 4 team versus the number 5 team in the conference to determine the other 2 at-large auto bids for the conference. Not at large, but I kind of like that. I think it would be interesting how that would actually work out, especially in a league like the SEC where, you know, they're 5 to 6 kind of top teams. They're all right there. You look at last year, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina were all in that 15 kind of ish range, but they would be the 3, 4, 5 teams from the SEC, and then you have a team like Texas A&M kind of. Those matchups would be really interesting. They'd add a lot of intrigue kind of to who gets in to the college football playoff. I don't know what it does to the actual conference championship, right? At that point, does winning the SEC, does winning the Big Ten, does it even kind of bring anything to the table? I don't know. I think it wouldn't really matter, right, at the end of the day, because even if you get to the conference championship, you're still guaranteed a chance to win a national championship. You're still guaranteed a spot in the playoff. So at that point, does winning the conference really matter? I guess for bragging rights, maybe, but besides that, kind of, there's no inherent advantage at that point. You may get a top 4 seed and a bit bye at that point, but besides that, there's really no big advantage, I would say. Another kind of interesting tidbit here with this is both the SEC and the Big Ten are in favor of the idea of a, quote, double bye for the number 1 and the 2 seeds. So how this would work in their proposed 16-team bracket, the first round would consist of 2 games. The 16th seed would play the 13th seed, and then the 15 and the 14 seed teams would play each other. Those 2 winners of those matchups would then move on to the second round. So the 15-14 winner would play the number 4 seed at their home field, and then the 16-13 winner would play the number 3 seed at their home field. And then the other second round matchups would be 10-7, 11-6, 9-8, 12-5, kind of rounding out the slate. That's kind of interesting. I guess it does make sense. If I was a number 1-2 seed, though, I don't even know if I want a double bye. If you think about it, all 4 teams that had a bye last year lost. If you get 2 of those weeks off, you won't be playing football for a month, essentially. And that's a long time to kind of be off. In a sport that's so intensive, so much on your body physically, taking that much time off and then having to come back and get back in that swing of things of just the physicality aspect, that's a big time gap. Would you really want to not be playing for a month, essentially, if you're the 2 seed? I don't know if I would want that personally. I would probably rather be one of the 3 or 4 seeds and, you then play a team that already played a first round matchup. You play a lesser ranked opponent, and yes, you're not getting that second bye, but still at the end of the day, it probably evens out a little bit, I would think. And that kind of ties to the title game conversation. If it kind of played out like last year, right, where the top 4 seeds are the winners of and the runners-up of the Big Ten and the SEC, if you lose the SEC or Big Ten championship, you're a Georgia or a Texas, something like that, and you're then the 3 seed because you lost the conference championship, it would kind of almost be better at that point, I would think, from my kind of perspective. So what's the incentive of winning your conference? I don't know. I don't really think. It's going to be interesting to see how that kind of plays out too. This whole idea of what it does to conference championship games. Does it even kind of move the needle at all? I think that's going to be an interesting part of it. 16 kind of seems like the sweet spot. It kind of seems like everybody's happy with 16. 14 really had a lot of momentum at some point, but it seems like 16 is the sweet spot. It kind of gives access to everybody and kind of alleviates a lot of the issues with the 12-team format. Tony Petitti pretty seems dug in really on this idea of automatic bids. Sankey's not going against him, so it seems like this is going to be something that's going to be pushed forward as well, is the idea of the automatic bid, how we're going to get there. And this agreement's going to kick in 2026, so obviously we have this year, but after that, we're not sure. Nothing's agreed upon. This is just kind of one of the ideas being thrown around, but it seems like this is getting a lot of momentum at this point in time. We're going to have to see how it all shakes out. We're probably going to end up seeing 16 teams in the college football playoff sooner rather than later, though. So right now, we are going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we're going to talk Big 12. We're going to talk about some of the best rivalries in a conference where a lot of rivalries got lost over the past few seasons. We're going to talk about some of the good ones, some of the ones that this conference still has. So stick with us. We'll be back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network on this Memorial Day. Happy Monday, May 26th, to everybody out there. Have a good show for you today. So just talked a little bit about kind of the Big Ten SEC 16-team college football playoff proposal. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about the Big 12 right now, and we're going to talk about some of the rivalries in the Big 12. A conference that, honestly, the rivalries kind of got ravaged over the past few years, just with some of the departures throughout the conference. But before we dive into that, I just want to remind everybody that this show is all about you. We love hearing your comments, your questions, your insights, your opinions, your hot takes, whatever you got. We want to hear it. We want to make this show as interactive, as exciting as possible. Now, one easy way to do that, if you're on YouTube, is to use the Super Chat feature. To use the Super Chat feature, all you have to do is click the $ at the bottom of the chat box, type in your message there, send that in. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, gets read live. It's also just a great way to support our channel and support what we're trying to build here at GSMC. We couldn't do what we do without your ongoing support, and we're so grateful to have you here as a part of our community at the GSMC Podcast Network. Now, let's dive into the Big 12. Big 12, kind of one of the unfortunate byproducts of this whole realignment saga is the loss of a lot of traditional rivalries across the country, right? But the Big 12 really kind of got hit hard. With both Texas A&M and Texas in the SEC, as well as Oklahoma, were big losses for Texas Tech, especially losing both of their in-state rivals in A&M and Texas. Kansas and Missouri, their border war, which had dated back to the 1800s, that got lost when Missouri went to the SEC in 2011. Oklahoma, Nebraska, they were conference rivals for a long time. Obviously, Nebraska in the Big Ten, Oklahoma in the SEC now. Bedlam's no longer after Oklahoma left for the SEC. But there's still some good ones. There's still some underrated ones. And one of the underrated ones, I think, that really has room to grow. Now, I wouldn't consider it as kind of a top-tier rivalry. These two don't even play each other during kind of rivalry week, during the last week of the college football regular season. But Texas Tech Baylor, yes, doesn't kind of carry the same type of angst for either team that matchups that with Texas A&M kind of once had. But this is still historic rivalry, still one of the oldest continually played matchups in the Big 12. They've met every year on the gridiron since 1956, so not, super long, but still 70, 80 years going back now, that these two programs have played each other. Baylor has led this series all time, but it's 41-40 with one draw. So it's pretty competitive if you think about it. Not one of the ones that the Big 12 chose to protect, though, when they expanded in 2025. So it's going to end at some point. Kind of sad, though. It means something to both fan bases, right? Because these are now the only Texas teams in the Big 12. Well, Houston, you do have Houston and TCU, but if you're looking at more historic programs, I would say Baylor, Texas Tech would make more sense as that kind of matchup. Also, just the contrast in cultures. You have the large state institution in Texas Tech, the private Christian university in Baylor, kind of makes it a little interesting, and just that contrast, the clash of cultures. And this is going to be kind of those mid-tier rivalries that I think it's got potential if they keep each other in the Big 12, if they stay conference rivals, it would make a lot of sense as this kind of gets chippier. Last year, Baylor won 59-35, kind of that classic no defense Big 12 matchup that you're kind of used to seeing, but a rivalry that could definitely kind of grow. One that's definitely a little more established, got the Sunflower Showdown. Come on, the Sunflower Showdown. Kansas State, Kansas, it's a good one. Series that carries a lot of weight in Kansas. Only recently has it kind of become competitive on the football field. Honestly, it's been played since 1902. Series actually belongs to Kansas right now. They're up like 14 games on Kansas State. But it's kind of been interesting because one of the two programs has been awful for a really long stretch of time. So the series hasn't been super intriguing. Not all Kansas's fault either. There's a time when Kansas State, they were the laughingstock of football at one point. Not Kansas. Before Bill Snyder took over, the Jayhawks really kind of dominated this series, and then it kind of flipped on its head. But now, both programs kind of on stable footing. Kansas State, I think, definitely in much better of a position than the Kansas program is, but kind of a rivalry that's intriguing for the first time and maybe ever. If they both continue on their current trajectory, this could be one of the more fun matchups in the Big 12 as it kind of grows into its own league. Last year, Kansas State won 29-27. Game was capped with a drive where they kicked a field goal with like a minute and a half left. So an intriguing matchup on the field, one that could definitely grow. Now, another one that Kansas State is involved in is Farmageddon. Farmageddon. What a great name for a matchup, too. It's Farmageddon. So clever. That's an awesome rivalry matchup name. But this is a series that goes back to 1917, over 100 years. One of the most even rivalries in the Big 12. Cyclones lead 53-50 with 4 ties throughout this series. But it's kind of been a series with long winning streaks. From 1994 to 2003 and 2008 to 2017, Kansas State had 10 wins in a row during that time. And then ISU did that in the 40s, from like 43 to 52. This game, though, it was played during the Spanish flu, during both World Wars, during COVID. It's been played for a long time. But it's not going to be a survived matchup, which is brutal. It's going to have its first break in 2027, so we still have a couple more years of Farmageddon. Last year, Iowa State won 29-21, kind of jumped out to a big lead, took it into halftime 24-14. They ended up kind of just maintaining it. This year, matchup is week 0, August 23rd, in Dublin, Ireland, at Aviva Stadium. It's going to be a good one. These teams are both going to be really solid this year. Iowa State won 11 games last year. Kansas State has had multiple seasons of 9+ wins under Chris Kleeman. Going to be a really competitive Big 12 matchup. This is going to be an exciting one this year, though. And we're going to have some Farmageddon across the pond in Dublin, Ireland. It's going to be a good time. Another good one. We got Arizona State, one of the still traditional kind of rivalries, playing for the Territorial Cup. And this is a great in-state rivalry, one that is protected by the Big 12, thank the Lord. A series that dates back to 1899. All-time, Arizona holds 51-45-1 record. A really tight series. Arizona State became a 4-year school in 1925, so only 100 years ago. And since then, the only years that the rivalry wasn't played was from 1938 to 40, and then 1943 to 1945 during World War II. And it's interesting, Arizona can actually attribute this series to the era before the start of World War II. From the start of the century to like 1937, Arizona went 15-1 against Arizona State, but in the modern era, Arizona State's really kind of had the edge. This century, in the 21st century, Arizona State is 15-9 overall. They did drop the last two before 2024. Obviously, last year demolished Arizona 149-7 en route to that Big 12 championship. Great matchup, great rivalry. Hopefully one that might be more competitive coming soon in the future. But we'll see. Arizona State, I think, is going to be pretty good under Kenny Dillingham. So, not really sure. Number one, though, come on. It's got to be the Holy War. BYU, Utah. Coolest name for a rivalry in the Big 12. One of the coolest in the country. And a great rivalry overall. The dislike between these two schools, it's not hard to understand. You have bragging rights for the state. You have one school that's a large state institution, one that's a private religious institution with kind of a massive national following, though. The cultural contrast between the two alone makes it a lot to love in this rivalry. Can be traced back to 1896. All-time, Utah kind of owns BYU in this, but most of Utah's lead is kind of due to the early parts of this series, from basically 1896 to almost the start of World War II. Utah went 18 wins, 0 losses, 3 draws against BYU until BYU finally won in 1941. So for 40 years of this rivalry, BYU didn't win anything. This is one of the big ones that will shape the Big 12 going forward. This is one that's kind of born to be a staple of the new Big 12. Last year, BYU wins 22-21 on a game-winning field goal, 44 yards out from Will Ferrin, 3 seconds left. Absolute classic. This is a matchup that's going to continue being great moving forward. A rivalry I'm super excited to see this year. After Utah kind of had a rough year, they should be bouncing back this year. BYU is going to be strong again. We're going to see another great edition of the Holy War this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to see some good big-time matchups in the Big 12 in 2025. Right now, we're going to take another quick break on the show. When we come back, we're going to talk Group of 5. We're going to talk to some of the Group of 5 quarterbacks, some of the ones that I really like, and kind of what's going on with them, what they're all about. So we're going to get into all of that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Today is Monday, May 26th. Have a good show for you today. Going to continue on by talking about the Group of 5. Talk about some of the quarterbacks that I really like out of the Group of 5 this year. One of those guys is Braylon Braxton. Guy that's kind of bounced around, was at Tulsa for a couple seasons before going to Marshall last year, having a really great year for the Thundering Herd, and now at Southern Miss. So, but kind of want to talk about what he did at Marshall last year. Last year, Sun Belt Conference Newcomer of the Year, played in 11 games, and he started in 8. Helped lead Marshall to win to the 2024 Sun Belt Conference Championship. was named the Sun Belt Conference title game MVP, and he went 8-0 as a starter last year. Threw for 1,600 yards with 19 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions on the season, and averaged about 150 yards per game in passing. Also was second on the team in rushing, 600 rushing yards on 134 carries, 4 touchdown runs, guy that averaged 55.5 rushing yards per contest. So a dual threat guy, a guy that was ranked top 40 nationally in following the league championship in passing efficiency. He was number 16 in the country. He was number 25 in yards per completion, number 39 in passing touchdowns in the nation. Against the blitz, one of the best in the country. Guy that had a 94 QBR in the nation, best among returning quarterbacks, 8 touchdowns against blitzes, 0 interceptions, and 10.5 yards per attempt when being blitzed. So a guy that can evade all types of pressure, guy that's cool, calm, and collected in the pocket, knows what to do, knows how to exploit matchups, and how to find those guys that are open. When somebody's blitzing, there's going to be somebody open downfield. He's able to find that guy that's open downfield, get it to that guy that's open, and make some plays happen. A guy, too, that when pressured, he was a great quarterback. A 59 QBR, trailed only one other quarterback in the group of 5. This is a guy that really knows how to play. Had 3 games in which he threw 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And in the college football playoff era, also had less than 220 passing yards in that game. So those combination of stats: 3 touchdowns, no picks, less than 220 passing yards. In the playoff era, only 3 other quarterbacks have done that. This is a guy that has some special skills, that's able to make plays without kind of forcing it. He's able to do a lot of different things. Going to be interesting how he performs at Southern Miss as they kind of switch gears, hired Marshall's head coach. I think Braylon Braxton at Southern Miss is going to be really intriguing to watch. Another guy, too, I think Tucker Gleason from Toledo, a guy that had 2,800 passing yards last year, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 60.5% completion percentage. Not bad. I always want to see a quarterback probably complete at least 63-64%. Just for me personally, that's kind of like my little benchmark. But you can't complain with above 60. Second in the MAC in touchdown passes, though, and in total offense. This was a guy that also was 4th in the league in passing efficiency. And then, too, kind of a dual-threat quarterback. 2nd on the Rockets in terms of rushing yards, and led the team with 7 rushing touchdowns last season. So, able to kind of use his legs when necessary. Had a couple games, too, against some bigger Power 5 opponents in which he really performed well. Against Pitt in their bowl, threw for a career-best 336 passing yards, had 2 touchdowns in a 48-46 6 overtime win in that matchup. Also had 34 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown against Pitt. So really came to play in their bowl game against a power opponent. Against Bowling Green, one of the better MAC programs, had 320 passing yards, 30 completions that game, 2 passing touchdowns. Against Mississippi State, obviously Mississippi State, one of the weaker Power 5 programs right now, especially being in the SEC, really kind of not there right now, I would say. But still, being at Toledo, going to Mississippi State, and having 285 passing yards on 23 for 28 passing with 3 passing touchdowns, as well as 40 rushing yards, is really impressive. That also got him MAC Offensive Player of the Week. That kind of shows the caliber of player that Tucker Gleason is, I think. The only Group of 5 quarterback with 3,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 13 or fewer turnovers that is returning to his seat this season. Toledo is kind of a sleeper team for that group of 5 at large bid right now, and Tucker Gleason is a big reason for that. This is a guy that can play really well, knows kind of what to do in certain situations, a guy that I think can really kind of lead Toledo to the MAC championship this year, to potentially even greater heights as a top 25 potential team. Another guy, though, in the MAC that I think is a really great group 5 quarterback as well is Parker Navarro. This guy, 2024, 13 starts for the Bobcats, 2,400 passing yards, and this is a guy that completed 66% of his passes, had 13 passing touchdowns, but also the rushing numbers here. 1,050 rushing yards on 116 attempts with 18 rushing touchdowns as a quarterback. That's pretty impressive. 4-time MAC Offensive Player of the Week, 1-time Male Scholar Athlete of the Week, a guy that was the MAC Championship Offensive Player of the Game, MAC Second Team All-Offense quarterback, was the MVP of their bowl game this year in the Cure Bowl, and a guy that some of his other stats are really kind of impressive. In the fourth quarter last year, Parker Navarro completed 77% of his passes, averaged 9.8 yards per attempt, and posted a QBR of 96, which was the best mark of any quarterback in the country. So this guy, when the lights were brightest, when the moment mattered most in the fourth quarter, Parker Navarro completed 3 out of every 4 of his passes, had 10 yards pretty much per pass he threw, and was the best quarterback rated throughout the country in the fourth quarter. That's super impressive. It doesn't matter if that is in the MAC. Those stats, that means you can play anywhere. That shows that you are a big-time quarterback. You can play when the lights are brightest, when the moment's the biggest. Parker Navarro is a guy that can really showcase what he can do, and he brings his best during that time. That's a trait that can play anywhere. That's something that makes Parker Navarro one of the better group of 5 quarterbacks, I think. Another guy, a legacy, Owen McCown, UTSA. Really great quarterback for Texas San Antonio last year. 3,400 yards passing, 25 touchdowns. Also had 340 yards on the ground, 3 rushing touchdowns. So 3,700 total yards of offense. A guy that was the Myrtle Beach Bowl game MVP, passed for 434 yards, a school record, and 4 touchdowns at Tulsa. Opened the season by throwing for 340 yards, 3 scores over Kennesaw State. Threw for 340 yards, a pair of touchdowns against Florida Atlantic. This is a guy, and the Memphis game too, 280 yards, 4 touchdowns in a 44-36 win over number 25 Memphis. This is a guy that can put up some crazy big-time numbers, can explode for a big-time offensive performance pretty much at any time, and a guy that can kind of do it both. You look at his North Texas game, 379 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, also adding 88 rushing yards on the ground. He can get yards with his legs when he needs to, but this is a guy that can put up some big-time numbers in the passing game. Really impressive as a prospect there, and a guy that's kind of in elite company right now. If you look at quarterbacks returning to the same team this year, who posted a QBR of over 60 through 25-plus touchdowns and 10 or fewer interceptions, there's Cade Klubnik, Rocco Becht from Iowa State, Sawyer Robertson, Baylor, Avery Johnson, and then Owen McCown. This is a guy that can put up some big-time numbers that really kind of puts him in the company of some of the elite quarterbacks in the country. A guy that I think can do a lot. Another guy I'm kind of looking at is Caden Veldkamp, Florida Atlantic, a guy that with Western Kentucky last year really had a great season. 3,100 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a guy that his most productive game, he threw for almost 400 yards at Middle Tennessee, also throwing for 5 touchdowns in that contest. Is a lot better against man coverage than he is against zone. 9.9 yards per pass, 13 touchdowns, 1 interception against man coverage, but 7.2 yards per pass, 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions against zone coverage. So needs to get better against zone coverage. If he can kind of work on those reads, if he can improve that and keep that man coverage performance, this is a guy that really has some high potential. 6'6", can do a lot. But Caden Veldkamp is definitely another guy that I'm going to look out for this upcoming season. So right now, we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we're going to do kind of a fun segment. We're going to talk about which coaches in the college football universe were the best college football players. We're going to dive into that, though, when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Today is Monday, May 26th. Had a good show for you so far. We're going to do kind of a fun segment right now. I want to talk a little bit about college football coaches, but them as players, their college careers. So yes, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about NFL, but I really kind of want to focus on the actual college careers and go, who could ball? Who could play some football? Who, can back up their words when they're talking to their players saying, oh, I could do this back when I was your age. Who actually could? This class 2 is kind of ranked. There's a lot of guys, especially with one of the guys that just got hired in the FBS. There's some depth here. There's some big-time performers. So there's going to be guys I'm going to miss. There's no doubt about it. I'm only going to talk probably about 7 or 8 of these guys. But I don't know. I just thought it'd be kind of fun. Kalen DeBoer, too, shout out here. This is a guy that did not play anywhere at a big-time university. But if you look at his stats at the University of Sioux Falls in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, this dude was like Bo Jackson. I'm not kidding. Hit 520 in baseball in 1998. Finished as a 492 hitter with records for average, home runs, hits, and RBIs. Okay. And then, that's baseball, right? Then, in football, Kalen DeBoer, All-America wide receiver at Sioux Falls in 1996, helped Sioux Falls to their first NAIA Division II national championship that year. And then as a senior, this dude also set the team record with 99 receptions for 1,372 receiving yards. Okay, Kalen DeBoer. All right, dude. And then also professionally played in an indoor football league briefly, albeit, but still. Okay, Kalen DeBoer. Man, 520 though, 520. That's pretty insane for baseball average. That's ridiculous. Mario Cristobal, Miami head coach, and this is a guy that, if you're being recruited by Mario Cristobal, he says come to Miami, I'd be like, all right, yeah, fair enough. First team All Big East at Miami, offensive lineman there, helped them to national titles in 1989 and 1991. Earned 4 letters for the U. Then spent a season as a Denver Broncos free agent. Also spent 2 in NFL Europe with Amsterdam, with their team there. A guy, though, that was a really great offensive lineman and obviously had a lot of team success, too, with the Hurricanes. Obviously, that has translated to his coaching career as well. But a guy on the offensive line that first team all-conference on a dominant Miami team, really impressive there. Marcus Freeman, this guy that high school All-American, kind of out of the Dayton, Ohio area, went to Ohio State, played college ball there, started 37 games at linebacker, often alongside another absolute dog in James Laurinaitis, a guy that is now coaching actually at Ohio State. But Marcus Freeman, though, second team All Big Ten honors in each of his last 2 seasons, 268 career tackles, 23 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, a guy that really was a great linebacker for Ohio State. I think could probably still play linebacker right now. 5th round draft pick in the NFL. Had to retire after a couple seasons due to a heart condition. But Marcus Freeman, absolute freak at linebacker. A guy that I would not have to want to play against at all. That guy, freak linebacker. Another quarterback, absolute legend, Timmy Chang, Hawaii, Rainbow Warriors quarterback. I'm a little young for Timmy Chang, but I do kind of remember that his name, kind of what he did there. Him kind of dissecting offenses at Hawaii, late night, in the middle of the night, pretty much across the continental U.S. A guy that ran that run and shoot offense and was a perfect quarterback for it. Set D1 records for passing yards, for total offense, for total completions, and for total attempts. So, threw the ball more than anybody, completed the ball more than anyone, had more passing yards, had more total offense than anybody in college football at the time he kind of finished. First team, all WAC, all 4 years he played. 2-time earned the Hawaii Bowl co-MVP honors, was a finalist for the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award, bounced around kind of the NFL, NFL Europe, CFL, but college football legend, a guy that revolutionized offense, kind of was one of the first big-time passing quarterbacks in college football, a guy that set NCAA records during his time at Hawaii, and really kind of ushered in a new era of college football. His impact can't be understated as a player, a guy that really kind of showcased what was possible with the passing game. Another quarterback, Scott Frost. Scott Frost, All-America selection, coming out of Nebraska, a guy that kind of piled up yards as a dual-threat quarterback. Also really shined in basketball and track in high school, but started his career at Stanford, played quarterback and safety, and then transferred back home. He ends up becoming Nebraska's quarterback 1 in 1996, has 22 touchdowns that year, and wins Big 12 Newcomer of the Year. Then, as he's entrenched as the starter in 1997, he becomes the first quarterback to go for over 1,000 yards in both passing and rushing in Nebraska history, helps that team win a national championship, becomes a third-round NFL draft pick, and actually plays safety in the NFL for 4 teams for about 6 seasons. A guy that though, as a quarterback, won a national championship, won individual awards as well, and set records at Nebraska, becoming the first quarterback to ever pass for over 1,000 and rush for over 1,000 in Cornhusker history, a school that really has a huge tradition of football excellence, and Scott Frost really contributed to that. Then you look at a guy like Deshaun Foster, UCLA, workhorse running back for them. Led the school with a team record in career carries and ranked in the top 5 at UCLA for career touchdowns, rushing yards, and scoring. As a senior, led the Pac-10 in rushing yards per game, had 138 rushing yards per game, and scoring, and also in all-purpose yards, averaging 155 all-purpose yards per game. Twice was a first-team All-League recipient, second-team All-American selection in 2001, guy that was a second-round draft pick by the Carolina Panthers, 6 NFL seasons, had a 33-yard touchdown against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, and was inducted in the UCLA Hall of Fame. Absolute baller at running back, a guy that hopefully can bring the running game back to UCLA after they haven't really had one for I don't know how long now. But Deshaun Foster, bring back the running game at UCLA. Show them what you used to do, dude. Showcase them what they can do. Another quarterback, Josh Heupel, a guy that grew up in South Dakota, was the state's player of the year in high school in South Dakota, but kind of didn't really have a clear path. Went to Weber State at first, had an ACL injury there, appeared in only 4 games, transfers within the state to Snow College, earns junior college All-American honors, and then transfers to Oklahoma. At Oklahoma, makes his presence immediately known in 1999, has 3,800 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, and then leads the Sooners to a national championship in 2000, throwing for 3,600 passing yards and 20 touchdowns in 2000. 25 years ago, he was doing that, throwing 3,600 passing yards. Incredible numbers. AP Player of the Year that year, Walter Camp Award winner, consensus All-American honors, and runner-up for the Heisman. A guy that didn't see time in the pros, but absolute legend in college for Oklahoma. Now, then you get to the last 2. And the debate between who's better, it could go either way. You have Deion Sanders, obviously. You look at his career in the NFL. You look at what he did at Florida State. Kind of speaks for itself. And then the other guy, new Bowling Green Falcons head coach, Eddie George. Eddie George won Heisman. In 1995 Heisman, 328 carries for 1,900 yards, 24 touchdowns. Also have 47 catches for 400 receiving yards that season for Ohio State. A guy that was recruited by some to play linebacker. Absolutely massive at the running back position. First team, pretty much every offense. Swept the Heisman, Maxwell, Walter Camp, Doak Walker awards. First round NFL pick. A guy that won Offensive Rookie of the Year, made 4 Pro Bowls, had a really great start to his pro career. But, I don't know. The debate can go either way. Him, Deion, first team All-American, final 2 years, third team All-American in 1986. One of the best American athletes of the past 50 years. Guy that did it all, did it well at Florida State. His impact can't be overstated, but I don't know. You could go either way on those 2, I think. That's a fun debate. I might lean Deion Sanders, but Eddie George is certainly a completely valid option there. So right now, we're going to take our last break of the show. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Big Ten. We're going to continue on with our Big Ten rankings, but we're going to dive into that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast. Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Going to finish off today by continuing on with my Big Ten rankings and kind of that lower middle tier today. So we're going to start at 14. I think it's Wisconsin right now. And kind of starting to look like it might take Luke Fickell a little longer to bring Wisconsin back to the top of the Big Ten hierarchy than any of us had originally thought of or originally kind of planned out when Luke Fickell took the job in Madison. Most people kind of expected this to be an instantaneous turnaround. This was a guy that, when he took over at Cincinnati, really kind of led that program to heights it hadn't seen since Brian Kelly was the head coach almost 15 years before. Led Cincinnati to the college football playoff when it was still a 4-team playoff, had an undefeated season there in the regular season, had a couple first-round draft picks in Sauce Gardner. Desmond Ridder was a third-rounder, but a guy that, again, got a chance as a starting quarterback in the NFL. A lot of people kind of expected when Luke Fickell took over Wisconsin, that change would be pretty instantaneous. The Badgers, though, have disappointed. The vibe just kind of seems off, it seems like. There's been sweeping changes made to this roster, to this coaching staff, which honestly, that's the kind of thing, though, that happens when a coach who's expected to take off right away is off to a 12-13 start over his first two seasons. And the problem that you face this year with Wisconsin is you expect the football team to be better, right? But they face a schedule that it could lead them to a much similar record than people expect. To that 5-7 record that they had last season, it could be very easily something similar. Perhaps even one that's worse. This isn't a super talented, deep Wisconsin roster. They're very unproven. Having new coordinators coming in, having the difficult schedule they do, I just think there's too many question marks to have them any higher than 14 right now. I wish I could. I like Luke Fickell a lot, but they got to prove something first. And right now, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to. Rutgers. I think Rutgers is 13, though. And it seems kind of crazy to have Rutgers ranked ahead of Wisconsin, but it kind of feels like that's where it's headed this year. They were a big surprise in the Big Ten last year for people not really paying attention. Greg Schiano, since he's kind of taken over, Rutgers has slowly risen their profile to a program that's not as easily overlooked any year. You can't just look at Rutgers anymore and go, oh, yeah, that's a 50-0 win. You can't do that. They're much more of a program that you have to kind of look at and say, hey, this might be kind of a tough matchup. And that's a testament to what Greg Schiano's done, that their profile has been raised even that much, I think. They certainly can take a step forward this year due to adding some continuity. You still have your quarterback coming back. You still have Schiano there. But the schedule isn't a favorable one. Last year, I think they kind of had a better schedule just the way it shook out. Last year, though, they finished 6th in the Big Ten in terms of points per game last season. If that's a team, they were really kind of one touchdown, one wild Illinois game away from going 5-4 in the conference and finishing 8-5 overall. Not 7-6. It's a lot better taste in your mouth that 8-5 just gives you. Schedule's not friendly this year, but the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, they're firmly kind of in that middle tier of the Big Ten. They're going to surprise some people. They're going to win games that they probably wouldn't have in years past, and they're going to be a really solid football program. But I think that probably 13 is pretty reasonable for them right now. Then at 12, I have UCLA. UCLA, they can certainly be farther down this list. I think in terms of actual talent on their roster, they probably are closer to 14 or 15. But you add Nico Iamaleava the biggest storyline of the spring transfer portal is Nico going to UCLA, spurning Tennessee. And if he actually plays to his potential, UCLA could make some noise. I'm not going to say they're going to be really great, but they could definitely be in for kind of a wild ride this year. He's a really great quarterback, and there's going to be a ton riding on him, certainly, but that's kind of what comes with the territory when you have that whole scenario that played out. They were already kind of encouraging towards the end of that last season by their play. You have a first-time head coach in Deshaun Foster. He's going to go through up and downs and tough schedule, being in the Big Ten. There was a lot working against UCLA. If they can kind of work out some of those kinks of last year, there's enough talent there to maybe push for some more wins than people would expect. Nico arguably is the most talented and has the skill to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten. Whether he meets that potential, I think, is kind of determine how good this Bruins team actually ends up being. We're going to see, though. At 11, I think it's Minnesota. So, anybody that plays PJ Flex teams, they know they're not going to be an easy out. That's kind of just how Minnesota is. They're not going to win the league, but they're going to be really tough to play against. That's just kind of how it goes. When you look at how Penn State played them last year, that was a slog of a game that was just kind of brutal to watch in terms of entertainment value, but that's just kind of what you get out of Minnesota. They're going to be tough to beat. They're going to keep things close. They're constantly disrespected, overlooked, and then they make teams pay for overlooking them. You can't just chalk them up to an easy win. I think that's the biggest thing with Minnesota. So yes, they're not going to win the league, but they're going to be plucky. They're going to be tough to beat. They're going to frustrate a lot of programs that are better than them this year. Then at 10, I think it's Washington. They took a step back last year. Obviously, that was to be expected. You have Kalen DeBoer leaving, Michael Penix leaving, that core of the national title run team in 2023 gone. So Jed Fish coming in the Big Ten, that was a tough situation to be in. No, they didn't reach the title game again. They did get to a bowl game though. And you have a guy coming up in DeMond Williams Jr., who I think is a stud. I think he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten, a guy that really kind of showcased his potential in the last few games of the 2024 season. Going to be a full-time starter. Super exciting dual threat quarterback in terms of potential. Really kind of tantalizing option there for the Huskies. I think he's going to play really well. And I think Washington's going to surprise some teams this year and win a couple games. They probably shouldn't. But I think DeMond Williams kind of gives them much more of a fighting chance than they previously had. So that is going to be all for our show today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Please remember to subscribe, like, follow the channel. And if you want, you can also go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, for even more sports content, more sports updates that you love. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to